Hey everybody, welcome to Future Salespeople's Sales Round Robin. This week we're on episode 4 and we're covering one of our favorite topics possible, Alex, in a slightly different way, business development. You hear those words, I know we're prepped, but how are you feeling about talking about business development on New Year's Eve of 2020?
Developing businesses, it's going to be a good one. I am excited for the next year. I'm also excited that it's episode 4. I thought it was 5 or 6, but I can't count that well sometimes. So excited to do this one.
Me too. Well, hey, this is a really fun and organic conversation, much the same as candidly all of these have been. But this whole sales round robin was inspired by a conversation with a former colleague of ours, Alex, in which I was reaching out just to talk to them about some of the challenges that I had heard through the grapevine about that they were experiencing in business development. And that person replied back that they were just doing swimmingly with their sales activities, of their cold calls, their cold emails, and their LinkedIn outreach. It's just, they're not getting the results they want, but it's just sales development. And that spurred this entire conversation of, well, what they were describing were sales activities, not truly business development. And so we wanted to go ahead and create a sales round robin to really level set what is business development and what it isn't. And instead of having to recreate the wheel, we came across the BD School, which is a super cool website. We'll link this, we'll share this, and everybody should check it out. But their definition of business development is a set of tasks and processes meant to develop and implement growth opportunities within and between organizations, and to do so in a sustainable way. Alex, what do you feel about that definition? How do you feel about it?
I think it's still pretty broad. I really do like it as a definition. I think it's a great jumping off point, a good foundation for organizations to establish what business development means for them. And I hope we can expand upon that. But I think the most important piece to me is the sustainability and the profitability. I think that's often lost on organizations, particularly startups. Yeah. Our previous colleague, not by any stretch of the imagination, his first venture, we actually worked with him after his organization was acquired by the one that we were working for. So it was surprising to hear that he didn't have maybe the same definition or a great handle on true business development, and he was confusing it with sales development. And I know that's something that we're going to tease apart, but I say all of that in that it's not easy to maybe contrast different types of development across the business, even for experienced or tenured entrepreneurs.
Totally. And I think it's one of those things, this business development manager, business development rep has all come in to add confusion of what is and what isn't business development. And so, yeah, you're right. Our friend, highly successful professional, they sold a business, they're starting another venture. So it's one of those things that whether it's your first venture you're starting off, your second, or maybe you've already been in sales for some time, we found more often than not, people simply just don't understand what business development is. And so really the goal of this conversation today, if anything, is to flush out what is business development, what are those activities, and how to compare and contrast it to other aspects of what people might assume what might be business development. And a couple things real quickly, and I'll talk about the sales capacity here just down first, right? So this visual here, if anything, to take a step back actually, shows that in business development, there is an aspect of sales development. There is an aspect of corporate development. It's a bit of a shared philosophy, shared resource in some ways, but it isn't wholly focused on one of those entities or one of those areas. So when our friend or former colleague was thinking about business development simply being sales activities, they're thinking exclusively through an execution layer, right? So business development, Alex, it's not just that sales development, sales execution, it's that higher order functioning, it's that executive functioning, it's being able to read the business as it stands today and understand what opportunities are there to grow it, to do so sustainably. Should you do some aspects of corporate development, look for strategic partnerships, etc., or should you be using your skills to go ahead and start new relationships through outbound efforts to start going ahead and start growing your business through new relationships? add on here, Alex, keep going. I know this is very much the tip of the surface, and this is where we want people to start thinking about what are the various different types of development activities, but helping them really understand what is unique about sales, business development. I apologize.
Oh, no, you're fine. And I think from a high level here, one of the most important things for me is the definition of executive functioning. We don't want to convey that this is something that only C-level or executives across the organization should be responsible for. When we say executive functioning, we think of that more as kind of the brain anatomy of your prefrontal lobe handling executive functions. It's taking in all of your senses. It's what you hear, what you taste, what you feel, and it is bringing that all together. And I think that's a better way to think about business development and executive functioning within that, is that you understand the entire organization, you understand market conditions, you understand individual functions and roles, how they collaborate and coordinate across one another. That's what we mean by executive functioning. And in that, everyone at your organization should be empowered to provide business development in some way or another. They just need to have some transparency and some motivation to do that for your organization. Things are going to be far more powerful if people have a shared definition around what business development is and how they can impact that on a daily basis.
That's exactly right. And you hit a huge part of this, right? Is business development can impact the whole business, and actors in a variety of functions or roles can contribute in a business development function, right? So I think that's really salient point, especially coming back and making sure I didn't mess up the executive functioning there, and really showing that. I think that's truly tremendous, right? And so when it comes to the tenets of business development, though, we're really trying to figure out what it is, what this might look like, and how you might actually facilitate this within your organization. Regardless if you're in sales, you're in marketing, you're in product, or if you're an executive or a simple individual contributor. I think really kind of three different key areas that we talked about, Alex, right? One, the business developer need to be aware of the market, have market awareness. Talk to me about the macroeconomic impacts of a business developer and their relationship with the business.
Well, I mean, I think you can just look at the current situation that we're in with the coronavirus, right? I think good business development professionals, as things got started early in 2020, they had a relative idea of what the coronavirus, what a pandemic, what a potential lockdown would do for their business. I know it was something that we were talking about as early as mid-February this year at our previous organization. And some businesses are thriving in this. Some were entirely destroyed. There are industries that might never fully recover or come back. Being a good business developer as it pertains to macroeconomics is that you need to be watching business conditions, or rather global economic conditions, and how that's going to impact your business, and you need to prepare for that. Sometimes it's being opportunistic. Sometimes it's battening down the hatches to make sure that you're saving as much as possible. But it is critical. And even if you're a small business, you're going to feel some of these larger events.
I completely agree. And it's really interesting that you just bring up the coronavirus as an aspect of all of this too, and how companies are surviving or thriving or failing in all of this. And really the goal of a business developer within this market awareness, whether it's macroeconomic conditions or it's even in normal business times, is start thinking about how they can even use the market, their knowledge about their buyer, about their competitive landscape, to fill gaps in their service offering and their product offering as well, right? It's one of the key things of a true business developer is that ability to think critically about their market position and try to identify ways to be more competitive, either through relationships, through acquisitions, or whatever it may be, to drive more business to them.
But as long as it's sustainable and profitable.
As long as it's sustainable and profitable. Very, very true and good call. The other area is really the growth focus. And I think there are a couple things here that tie back into one of our core tenets of being a scientist. Alex, tell me about being a scientist and growing with it.
I mean, data-driven and iterations, probably the two bullets here that tie best into being a scientist. We're not expecting people to wear lab coats. We're not expecting people to try to hold all control variables while they test one thing, because that's not the way that business operates. That moves too slow, particularly for startups. But there are ways that you can craft different tests and iterations and A/B tests as you try to grow and scale your business in a profitable way, where you can indicate what success was, or at least get an approximate of what success was, so you continue to drive that in the future. Or on the flip side, you can avoid something that's a potential detriment to your business. So in business development, you need to have that growth focus. Again, it needs to be in a sustainable and profitable way. But if you don't have a consistent methodology, something similar to the scientific method where you're holding controls, you're setting your players, you're setting hypothesis, updating it, retesting over time, and making sure that all your measures are good, it's going to be really difficult for your business to grow in a way that you understand and that you can control.
Well, I think that growth focus, that being data driven, really ties nicely into the being able to facilitate performance, right? And those are truly interconnected, and that's why I also really enjoy the visual here, Alex. Kudos to you of showing that. Depending upon the time, the season, or the needs of the business, these facilitate performance, your market awareness, your growth focus. These could be areas that you need to be equally distributing your time, energy, and focus in, or your skill set in, right? And then on the facilitating performance, really how it's connecting that growth focus is you're seeing the data come in. You might be reading the tea leaves to some extent. And you're really trying to understand, how can I, let's say, facilitate performance? How can I help with the forecast within the business? How can I go ahead and try to drive more end revenue or pipeline, wherever that may be? You can really start trying to look at the data that you're getting in, understand the success metrics of where the business needs to go, and start applying what you need to do to help the business grow. Is it to launch a new product, integrate with the new service? Is it co-market? Is it go ahead and try to go ahead and do some sort of webinar, as an example, with each other? So these types of things, being both growth focused, data driven, and be able to use that to start looking at success metrics, forecast outcomes, really starts driving success in a business development lens.
Well, I think what you just outlined there is the true seeing the forest amongst the trees. In business development, having that higher level executive function view, you can see where there's opportunity to improve or to mitigate loss at the individual level, all the way up to the organizational level. So when you need to focus on a role, a team of a specific role, a function, cross-functional collaboration to drive that improvement in performance, that's what you do. It's making sure that you're getting down to the root cause of either potential opportunities or deficits or detriments that you're seeing across the business, and get after them in a way that makes the most sense. And again, this isn't something that should just be left to the C-suite, to the leadership with VP titles. This is something that everybody across the organization should be empowered to improve and to contribute to.
Democratize growth through business development.
Growth, yeah.
And I think that, Alex, is a really nice and organic segue into this kind of last thought or philosophy, right? And it's that the organizational impact, right, of a true business development, like adopting a common language, having a common language, common approach, and common understanding of business development. You can empower actors across your organization to grow sustainably and efficiently, right? So how can empowering your marketing team with these tenets of business development go ahead and increase the top of your funnel? How can your sales team, now embracing these tenets of business development, go ahead and improve their close won rate? How can they go ahead and improve their deal size, shorten their sales cycles? How can your success team, with this type of organizational lens to business development, find ways to improve customer lifetime value? Or how can your support team go ahead and help mitigate churn through different types of relationships that are possible or only possible through business development? So I think that, to me, is the most exciting thing. And I think the biggest miss from our friend in a couple of ways, again, just coming all the way back to that story of what do people miss about business development and where do they typically get it with sales development? Business development requires outbound activities to go ahead and develop business, whether you're in marketing, sales, success, or support. That could be a LinkedIn outreach, that could be a phone call. But business development is much more than the activities. It's knowing your buyer, knowing the market, being aware, having focus, and be able to really hone in on performance. So that's, I think, the theme that I'm getting from all this, Alex.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. It starts with establishing that common language and definition around what business development is to your organization, making sure that you are training everyone on what business development means to your business, because that empowers them to keep an eye out on opportunities and ways to improve it. It's going to help you be more opportunistic, to read those tea leaves, and to be ahead of potential options to improve, no matter what your function is. And it also creates a positive feedback loop where if business development is only ever coming from the top down, you might miss things. So then having each contributor across your team, whether they're entry level or they're more senior leadership, if they are then pushing back up business development tenets and core values to the organization as a whole, you should expect to see more improvement faster.
You know, it's interesting. We didn't really plan on this, but one of
Uh-oh.
the last, no. I
Going
was
off
thinking,
script.
no, one of the last companies that we had worked together at, in which the C-suite was actually engaged in business development, I would say as a whole, the organization was very into business development, and it wasn't as siloed, right? To your point, right? If leadership embraces it and tries to democratize it or try to provide these principles across the board, then everybody gets into it. It's been a while since I've been a part of an organization where the C-suite is very eager to develop business, be out in market, and want to actually work with customers or try to sustainably grow their business through unique relationships by adding value. So it's just one of those things. Top down, bottom up doesn't really matter. But I haven't been personally part of an organization where business development is a strong cultural theme unless it's being led from the top down.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it starts from top down. And I think what is rare is when organizations are empowering everybody to drive business development from the bottom up and create that feedback loop. It's hard, right? I mean, you can get caught up in the day-to-day. Growth is difficult, particularly at startups. You drive fast, you break things, you move on. People need to be hyper-focused on their roles because you're looking to have a good production to labor ratio. And that means a lot of work and long hours and focus on specific tasks, because then you're more efficient in specialization. But taking just a little bit of time to slow things down and make sure that everyone's contributing to larger initiatives like business development, or getting executives involved in things like sales development to improve in those areas, it's critical.
Leading by example, Alex. One of those crazy things. Well, hey, friends, that's episode 4. It's business development with future salespeople. Go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what else you would like to see in future videos. And coming up next for us, this is finally a guest topic. So I'm super excited for guests to really show off and do his thing. Alex, what are we cooking up next time?
We're going to be talking about structuring partnerships for success. So specifically, partnership structures in team, in reporting, and organizational charts. Depending on where a partnership team exists, that can lead to success or failure across particular partner ecosystems, how success is viewed organizationally. So we're going to dive into that in more detail. It's really kind of a teaser because we've been working on a partnership 101 course. So it's going to lead into some of the topics that we will have in that course. Should be online here in the next couple of weeks.
Looking forward to it. Everybody, Happy New Year.